Hello, former Crusaders, and welcome to the latest episode of the Weekly Crusaders. My name is Sean Waskrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. And we are talking about two movies that came out during the week of March 26th through April 1st. This week's episode, we're talking about another sex comedy from me. I think that's like, 4 or 5 now. And we're talking about a comic book cult film from Brian, which is what we're going to start off with first. And Brian's film is the 1995 film Tank Girl. Tank Girl came out March 31st, 1995, had a budget of $25 million, had a weekend opening of $2.02 million. It was number 10. Its opening weekend, its highest ranking, and had a finished box office of $4.04 million. Did not go international, so that is domestic and all of it. So basically, it doubled its money after its first week. I don't think I've ever seen that before. But yeah, Tank Girl, Brian, take it away.
Yeah, Tank Girl. Well, both the movies you talk about this week are absolute like products of their time. Like his is absolutely a 2000s movie, soundtrack and style and everything. Mine's absolutely a 90s movie because the 90s were a weird time. Tank Girl, just the brief synopsis via Letterboxd. After a comet disrupts the rain cycle of Earth, the planet has become a desolate, barren desert by the year 2033. Not too far off.
10 years, guys. 10 years.
With resources scarce, Kesley, the head of the powerful evil Water and Power Corporation, the de facto government, has taken control of the water supply. Unwilling to cower under Kesley's tyrannical rule, a pair of outlaws known as Tank Girl and Jet Girl rise up, joining the mysterious rebel Rippers to destroy the corrupt system. There's your plot synopsis. This is based on a comic book, a black and white kind of independent comic book, Tank Girl. Which is this is in the years when it was mostly like Marvel and DC and things like this, and this was about the time that like Image Comics then were starting to rise up with their Spawn and things like that. These are the independent ones which could go more, they tended to be more like R-rated and things. They wanted to make a name for themselves. They had to be a little bit more risque, both their material and stuff. And so he came out with this comic book, which they decided to make a movie of it. Which sure, why not? I don't know why. I don't think it had a following big enough to merit a movie, but it was something original. The main thing about this, the main appeal for me and for most people is Lori Petty, Lori Petty was coming off of, Point Break and League of Their Own and other movies just escaping me at the moment.
Was this before or after In the Army Now?
There was I forgot about In the Army Now. There's another one I'm forgetting about, but she was kind of just starting to make a name for herself. She was originally supposed to be the lead in Demolition Man, but ended up pulling out of that, and Sandra Bullock took over that role. Free Willy she was in, a couple other things.
In the Army Now was before this.
Yeah, especially after Point Break and League of Their Own, she was kind of really just starting to break out, and she made her the star of this. And honestly, the plot of this movie is so inconsequential. It's a post-apocalyptic kind of world, and it's these people fighting up against the evil corporation, in this case, the Water and Power Department, whatever it is. But this is a movie that's really all about its lead. This is Lori Petty as Tank Girl, who creates this character who is, she's supposed to be kind of rebellious and independent and fun. And even just the look of her, it's straight out of the comic book. And this, to me, and actually to a ton of people, including Margot Robbie herself, this is the proto Harley Quinn. This is basically, they took this character, and if you look at Harley Quinn, almost any version of it, especially Margot Robbie's version of her, it very much is kind of, I won't say copied, but kind of inspired by Tank Girl in this movie. A little bit in the look, but definitely in the attitude and the way she talks and kind of her personality. So right there, I mean, and I'm a huge fan of Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. I love her in Suicide Squad, not the whole movie, but I love her in Suicide Squad and in The Suicide Squad, which is a good movie, and Birds of Prey, which I think is honestly maybe my favorite of the DC, whatever they call it, Worlds of DC universe. It's definitely up there. Sean's giving me a very...
Are you saying Birds of Prey is better than The Suicide Squad?
Yes.
Okay.
Birds of Prey is possibly number one. Man of Steel is up there too for me, but
all right.
Sean's like, I'm gonna hold.
We're not talking about DC, but okay.
So yeah, it's about her character, and it's also very much about the style of this movie, which is a love it or hate it kind of thing. Because, like I said, this is the 90s 100%. The style of it, the transitions of it, the music of it, with the soundtrack is like Bush and Garbage and all these kind of bands of the mid '90s. Even just this year alone, 1995, you had like this and Johnny Mnemonic and I'm trying to think what else came out at the same time. Hackers. They were just really into like very kind of techno thing mixed with comedy, mixed with weird styles. And so, like I said, it's very much a product of its time. But for me, I loved it. And like I said, I could care less about the plot. I'm not a big fan of the, Rippers, which are basically these mutant kangaroo human hybrid things.
Mhm.
Although you do get to see Ice-T as one of those, which is very interesting. Um, but yeah, had you seen Tank Girl before at all?
It's one of those things, a lot like when we talked about Dungeons and Dragons on Cinemasochism, which came out today, was that I remember this movie. I remember knowing that I saw this film, but then as I was watching this back for the show, I was like, I don't remember anything. I know I watched it, but I don't remember a lick of this movie. So that's kind of how it was with me. I know I've seen Tank Girl. I don't remember a single thing about Tank Girl except for Lori Petty. Like I didn't know. I didn't remember that Naomi Watts was Jet Girl. I
Yeah,
forgot.
it's one of Naomi Watts. I mean, not like her first film. This very early in her career, before she had a name for herself, she was Jet Girl. Anne Cusack, one of the lesser known Cusacks, she was Sub Girl, but she has a very, very small part in this movie. So what were your thoughts on it though? Then?
And don't forget about Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah, well, Malcolm McDowell, I was going to get to him. I was going to go to you first, but fine, I'll talk about that. Malcolm McDowell in the mid '90s. I'm telling you, everything about this movie, from the soundtrack to the cast, everything just dates this movie in good ways and bad ways. But in the mid '90s, there was a couple people who were like the go-to villains for any movie. There was Dennis Hopper, who was doing like Speed and Waterworld and Mario Brothers and some other movies. And then there was Malcolm McDowell, who would do like Star Trek Generations, and he did this, and they're kind of the go-to, old white man villains. And I mean, I think in almost every movie he does, he's chewing up scenery, and he definitely is doing it here. He kind of plays his usual kind of over-the-top self, and for me, it works.
Yeah, he's much like how Mark Strong and Ben Mendelsohn today, where it's like, actually, Mark Strong's kind of turned into more of a good guy now. I think he's one of those like tired of being a bad guy, make me a good guy now. But yeah, I remember when Brian picked Tank Girl, my immediate thought was,
Ugh.
Man, because I just knew, I was like, I know I saw Tank Girl. I don't remember any of it, which should really much tell me how I felt about it when I saw it. And Lori Petty to me has always been, to me, like a knockoff Madonna, but a better actress, obviously. But every time I see her, I just think of like, you're trying so hard to be Madonna, but
She's
you're
so much
not.
more personality than Madonna, though.
She does. I'm just talking about in looks. Like,
okay.
She's always trying to be like stylish, which of course, then they were in a league of their own together. It's almost like she was in a league of her own, saw Madonna, goes, you know what? I want to be just like you. And so then after that was like, I'm going to be Madonna. And that's how she always gives me. So, and Tank Girl was like that one. It's like when I think of Lori Petty, I don't think about her great performance in A League of Their Own. I think about, oh yeah, she was Tank Girl. And going into this movie, and I never really actually, even as I was watching it recently, I did not ever correlate her with Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. Now that you bring that up, I was like, yeah, you got
They're practically the same character.
You do have a point there. Nowhere near as good as Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. In my eyes,
Margot Robbie's better, but I don't know if I go as far as nowhere near as good.
Yeah,
especially because Margot Robbie, honestly, I don't know where it's at now. Margot Robbie and her production company actually optioned this for her to star in a new version of Tank Girl. This was, I think, in 2020 is the last I heard of it. So I don't know if it's still happening, but
I think if the Harley Quinn stuff ends up dying out because of the whole new DC thing, then I think Tank Girl probably will be a go.
Well, that's because part of me thinks, well, obviously she's perfect for it, but part of me thinks it's too close to the character she's playing. So, but maybe, like you said, if Harley Quinn, her version stops,
is Margot Robbie just keeps doing the same shit in different movies, but it works. But eventually, it's not, and she's gonna have to fucking do something else differently. But Tank Girl.
Well, that's the reaction I hear. Although it is the reaction I expected.
This movie is annoyingly obnoxious. And I was just agitated the whole fucking time watching this movie. Lori Petty's doing her all in it. I think Naomi Watts, shockingly, was like, oh my God, Naomi Watts, cool. She's actually really, really cute as a brunette or black hair, whatever you want to. I think she's more of a brunette. But when I saw her, I was immediately like, okay, this could actually help the movie out, and it was fine. It's more or less the dialogue is annoying, and then it's almost got like a Josie and the Pussycats kind of thing, where it does like this the fast forward montaging stuff, but it's very much like a live action cartoon, but not good.
Yeah, well, they very much, I think, went for, because this is like, again, this is before comic book movies were taken seriously, so they're always looked at as kind of a silly thing when they tried to make comic books into movies. And here, the obnoxiousness of it and stuff, that's all the character from the comic book. So I totally get that. I get why it wouldn't sit well with you, why certain people wouldn't like it, but yeah.
I'm not talking about necessarily the character Tanker. I'm talking about obnoxiously the way it's shot.
Oh yeah.
I hate the way it's shot. I hate the editing. I hate how it breaks in and out of comic book to live action. I hate the like there's that one scene where looks like she's in that dressing room where she's basically trying on all the clothes, but it's all done in fast forward, and she keeps coming up into the camera and then backing out and stuff. And it's just, and then you have that whole scene where she makes like the entire room sing some shitty ass song. And I'm just like, all of this, I'm like, time check. How much fucking time is left in this damn movie?
Like the comic book movie of Moulin Rouge.
But not good though. Malcolm McDowell, is it McDowell or McDonald? McDowell. He's being Malcolm McDowell, so I have really nothing against him. But then you have this injury thing happen to him, and you spend the whole movie hiding his face, and then when it comes time to show his face, it's still just his fucking face. But then there's a little niche to it, which I was like, okay, I like that. But then it was like, then why did you hide his fucking face the whole movie? Like, you're waiting for this big, like, did you run out of budget? Because you made it seem like he was gonna have like this grotesque face and all this, and then he comes out of the shadows and it's just him. And it's like, so why lead us down this road?
Alien under there, I don't know.
He didn't even have a face. It was a 3D hologram. So it's like stupid shit like
that's
that.
Right, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, it was a 3D hologram thing, which I actually thought was, for 1995. I thought that good. That was really good. Like, I commend you guys for that. That's probably the best thing he did in this movie. It's the Kangaroo Rippers. That's a thing. Especially since at some point in the movie you're like, yeah, Tank Girl's totally boning that one that's a dog. So she's basically banging a person that was a dog that was transferred to a human, who was then transferred to a kangaroo human, and she's boning him. That's a girl. But
no, like, they're all kangaroos. She wasn't a dog. He's
no. There's a legitimate line in the movie. They're like, Ice-T was like, I was a cop. And the other guy was like, I was a salesman, or blah, 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 blah. And then the main one was like, I was a dog, but I was a really, really good boy, so they turned me into a human. And then he got turned into a kangaroo.
Oh, I totally didn't pay attention to that. He
is an actual dog that was turned human, who was then turned to a kangaroo. So she was fucking 3 species on that one. But it was just like, when I'm trying to think of, like, when it was trying to be artsy and edgy and trying to be like MTV, it was obnoxiously stupid.
That's a perfect way to describe it. It was definitely MTV generation movie.
Yeah. When it was trying to be an actual film, and Lori Petty was staying on a straight line of dialogue and following plot, and her and Amy Watson, and then like you had a plot point. She's trying to, her motivations is to go from here to here to here to do this. The movie was fine, but you had to then keep throwing in all these oddball things, which just derails the film and basically stops it. Now, you could do that in a Deadpool, and that works because it's Deadpool, which Tank Girl, I don't know if she was like a female Deadpool way before Deadpool was really much of a thing, which if that was the case, then that would have maybe worked, but not in 1995, and it definitely doesn't work right now. The kangaroos, I guess you had to get used to them, and then once they were, it was like, okay. I mean, practical effects, they look all right. I think they look more like dogs than kangaroos, but it was just one of those things where it's like it went so far over here. So it was one of those was like I had so many ranges of emotions going through. It was like when it started, I was like, okay, I'm into this to a point. And then they just kept jumping over everywhere, and there was no linear plot at this point because, like you said, the plot's inconsequential, and it's just let's just keep doing wacky shit with Lori Petty, and let's just keep having Lori Petty just for the most part ad-lib through this whole movie, and it got to the point where it just got real tiring really fucking fast, and I was so by the time they got to that song and dance number, I was like, I am so over this movie. I am so tired of watching this, and this movie still has like 45 minutes left. And then the kangaroo showed up, and I was like, okay, I guess we're on board with this. But as much as I was like, okay, it corralled her into the plot. And I as much as I don't like the whole thought process of the kangaroo rippers, it got the movie back on its rails and stayed true through the rest of the way, which was like, it definitely didn't win me over because I don't like the movie, but it went from like a cinemasochism-esque kind of film to it's not good, but it got better as it went along. But my God, the first half of that movie is, to me, borderline unwatchable. But Lori Petty went out and did what she wanted to do with it. I commend her.
And for me, that was the appeal of it. It's like you liked when they finally like focused on the story. I'm like, I just liked watching Lori Petty go crazy.
What annoyed me, and once again, it's like, okay, it's 95. That's a writing thing. Is you got to remember this is 2033. Tank Girl's maybe what 20? Let's go 23 years old at this point. She's definitely not in her 30s. And so that means that she was born probably 2000, late 2000s. And here she is quoting fucking Muhammad Ali. You don't know who Muhammad Ali is. Shut up. Stop quoting Muhammad Ali. She's quoting all this stuff, or she's doing all these antics that are from like the 70s and 80s. And I know this movie was made in 95, but this is 2033.
Well, that's like saying you can't quote The Godfather because you weren't alive when that was out.
I'm not in a movie quoting The Godfather in 2023. Plus we're not in a world where this stuff happened. Like, we can watch movies whenever the hell we want. They don't have that crap there. And it's like, so it's not like she would have watched SportsCenter or ESPN Classics or Ali with Will Smith to know those lines, to know that Muhammad Ali said that crap. Like, that's the stuff that irks me. It's like, and they're in a post-apocalyptic world. She should not know those lines. She should not know who Muhammad Ali is. And yet she's saying those lines. And it's not just that one. She does other things in the movie too, where it's like, you wouldn't know who that person is because of your age and where we're at in the world and the time frame. And it's like it's of the writing of 1995. But it's little things like that. Like,
it's a comedy. It's like Shrek.
Like,
makes
even
a million references.
Even her
Shrek makes a million references to like pop culture references. Like, come on, Shrek doesn't know this kind of stuff.
Yeah, but like, even her knowing that specific song that she makes the whole group dance, I'm like, how do you know that song? Like, come on.
You don't think that music would prevail? People still know songs past 10.
Does it look like they have electronic, like
electronics?
Not to watch old shit like that, but it was nitpicky. That's nitpicky shit. I'm just saying it's nitpicky. That's you trying to attack the turtles because they're fucking turtles. You know, which was the whole story that we had on last week's episode. But yeah, it was just. I don't want to dog it too bad because I know Brian likes this movie, but for me, it was just
no. Like I said, this is one like Moulin Rouge, which I totally get. Anybody who hates this movie, I get it, or anywhere in between. But for me, it worked.
Yeah, it was just really annoying and obnoxious for me. I can see the appeal of it to the cult following and to Brian. Definitely not my kind of film. But like I said, then there's movies like last week with Sorority Boys, where it was hitting everything for me and not you. And like that's the loveliness and the wonder of movies, is that certain movies are not going to hit for everybody. Certain movies are going to hit for everybody except for the people who want to be trolls. And then there are these weird films in between where it's like there's a very, very niche crowd that's going to love this, while 98% of the world's going to hate it. Brian is in that niche little 2% or niche little 2%, and I'm on that outside looking in. I don't think Brian's like crazy for that, or not like saying Birds of Prey is better than the Suicide Squad. Are you fucking high? But and you're just saying that because Mary Elizabeth Winstead's in it, and I approve of that. But that doesn't mean it's better than the Suicide Squad. But it's just one of these. It's just like, nah, this one didn't work for me. And Brian even knew it. He even called it last week. He's like, Brian or Sean's gonna hate this movie, and you were right. You were right. So, but it is your film, and you're allowed to praise it as much as you want. But yeah, anything else you want to add for Tank Girl?
No, I can move on to your, sex comedy of the week.
Sex comedy of the week. Da, da, da. We should have like saxophone music play through. But you like this one, so I'm not gonna have to defend it like I did last week with Sorority Boys. Going to my pick, we're talking about the 2001. I think this one's more of an indie film. I definitely did not see this one in theaters, but it did get released in theaters.
I saw it in theaters.
I did not see it in theaters. I saw it when it was on TV. But we were talking about 2001's a sex comedy, Tomcats. Tomcats came out March 30th, 2001, had a budget of $11 million, had a weekend opening of $6.4 million. It was number 4 its opening weekend, which was its highest ranking, and had a finished box office of $23.43 million, $13.56 million domestic, and $9.87 million international. Yeah, Tomcats. Like Brian said about both movies, this is definitely a movie of its time. 2000s. You know what band is in every 2000s movie about this stuff? The Offspring. And what's this movie start off with? The Offspring. And you know what? I loved it. Because anyone who's a 2000s music person loves The Offspring. They're not a great band, but they have some real songs that slap, and when they're on, you'll love it. And this one, what I liked about it, there's certain parts of it that I really liked, and I kind of wish they would have doubled down on it, which was the beginning opening scene. They had like that cartoon sketch, almost like Spy versus Spy kind of thing, which was it? It wasn't Summer Rental. One Crazy Summer.
One Crazy Summer. It's really throwback. They used to do that a lot of the 80s. So like the opening sequences be animated. Just kind of throwback to those.
One Crazy Summer, they would interweave it into the story. And part of me was like, I almost wish, because he was a cartoonist, that they would have actually brought that in a little bit into the movie. And they were probably like, nah, it's too over the top. But I was like, I kind of wish I would have seen more of the cartoon stuff in the middle of the film. But the main plot of Tomcats is you're following basically these group of bachelors, and one of their friends is getting married to basically the first girl who had sex with them. And they basically decide that they're all going to make a pact, and they're going to put in like $200 a year. And then the bank guy, the guy who knows how to handle money, is going to put it in this like high trust fund thing. And then each year it's going to grow and grow and grow with interest and stuff like that. And whoever is the last bachelor standing is going to win the pot. And of course, at that time, they're like, oh man, that's like $5,000. It's going to be great. But by the time we get to the actual main story, it's at about $500,000. And so it's down to basically the two main guys, which is Chris O'Connell.
Jerry
O'Connell. My brain went Chris O'Donnell, and I was like, that's not right. Jerry O'Connell and Jake Busey. And they're basically, still fighting for who's going to do it, because their main job is they're going to screw every single woman in the world. And I was like, that's very creepy to say, because a lot of those ones are children. But anyway, and so Jerry O'Connell, after the previous wedding to one of the bachelors was Horatio Sands, who gets married to Jamie Presley, which that still makes no sense in this plot.
Yeah, there's no way Horatio Sands lands Jamie Presley. Jamie Presley, she seems to have this, like, they cast her as like the Chubby Chasers, like here, and wasn't she like Jon Favreau's wife in something?
Oh God, what movie was it? Was I Love You Man?
It was I Love You Man.
Yes, I Love You Man. Yeah, she always seems to get with like these necessarily unattractive guys, or basically guys who are nowhere in her league. Now, there is a ongoing comedic plot through this movie that she's cheating on him with women. And now, if you were going to make her a lesbian, and she basically was dating, or she married Horanzo to basically as like a beard, and while she did that, then that would have made sense. But that's so not where the story goes in the film. But basically, they get married in Vegas, and Jerry O'Connell is basically trying to get hook up with this like high roller girl who basically only gets with guys who are high rollers. So he loses
By the way,
$51,000.
was the least attractive woman in the movie.
Yeah, I thought she was a man for a second. I thought it was one of those.
I told when first time I saw it, I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a dude. That's so a dude.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be one of those. Because I probably kind of forgot the movie a little bit. It's like that's a dude in drag, but that's not at all where that goes once again. But he keeps losing in craps, and he ends up getting stopped by the casino, and he owes $51,000 in the next month, or they'll kill him basically. So he now basically is trying to hook up Jake Busey with the one girl he thinks that got away, which is a woman from the wedding from the first film, or for the first wedding at the beginning of the film, which is played by Shannon Elizabeth from American Pie, who's a cop. And they basically team up to basically trick trick Jake Busey's character into getting married within that time frame, so that way he can win the pot and basically save his life from these casino guys. And that's the general plot of this film. I know I just kind of went really into it, but kind of have to make sense, other than a bunch of bastards trying to get laid and win money. But but yeah, I mean, like I said, cast wise, like I said, you got Shannon Elizabeth, Jerry O'Connell, Jake Busey, who I actually really, really enjoy Jake Busey. And he's one of those, like, when you see him, you immediately go, but then it's like, no, I love Jake Busey. Every time it's like, I like him, man. Everything I see him,
it's kind of like because Gary Busey got this whole reputation for just being like insane.
Yeah.
But he was always fun to watch in the movies he showed up in, even though he was completely like off the rails. And then so his son Jake Busey started acting. I saw him in everything from Frighteners and this and some other stuff. And the same thing, like you said, he's like, oh, this guy's just like Starship Troopers, right? And he's just like, oh, this guy's just gonna be awful. But then, but he seems to be able to pick the roles that works in, you know?
He
And
knows
it's a ton of fun. Yeah.
every time, and it works. And then Horatio Sands, he's fine, and as well as Jamie Presley. There's not really much else to the rest of the cast. I mean, there's people in there that you'll notice and stuff like that, but it's mainly these five characters. This is just, it's not like in 2000s with the sex comedies, you get to a point where, is it just a bunch of horny guys trying to get laid, or are they trying to cross this line that it wouldn't work by today's standards because it's going to offend like so many people today because they can't handle jokes in movies anymore? And Tomcats, at least for me, is more of a movie that still could work today. This movie still works. It's a sex comedy, but it's not like them taking advantage. They just like having sex. And this is all about a bet about the last man standing. It's not offensive really in any way. It's not doing anything super vulgar. Even then, the nudity is also, for the most part, not. There's like maybe
I
one.
think the biggest problem you have today is that people now jump at it. Just the sexualization or the objectification of women just sets off people. But that's just people that want to be offended by anything.
Magic Mike. 50
Yeah.
Shades of Grey. Shut your fucking mouth. Not you, Brian, but just people. So don't act like you're above it all. But yeah, this movie still would actually work today, whereas Sorority Boys last week would not. This one 100% could still be made today. But yeah, Jerry O'Connell, he's not the greatest actor, but he's good in this. Shannon Elizabeth, not the greatest actress. She's good in this. Jake Busey, like I said, he knows his assignment every time. He's great in this. Horatio Sands, Jamie Presley, they all are solid in the film. And that's the thing, is if you got a solid cast, and while, yes, none of them are these amazing, actors, but if they all put on solid roles and the plot actually is fun, you got a solid comedy here. And that's what Tomcats is. It's not breaking the mold into this amazing comedy, but it's one of those, and much like when we were going through our list of movies, you remember it, and you remember it fondly. Like I was like, oh yeah, I really like Tomcats. And sure enough, that's why I picked it. I know you like this movie. I don't know if you like it as much as me, but I know you liked it. So, I mean, when was the last time you saw Tomcats besides this week?
Honestly, I think I watched it about a year ago or so, maybe 2 years
Ryan,
ago.
you watch so many more movies. Like it had been at least a decade since I'd seen Tomcats before I watched this again.
I can tell you, I last watched this on July 29th of 2020. There you go. So, but yeah, I mean, I had seen this movie, obviously. I saw it in theaters, and then I saw it, I've watched it a couple times since it came out on, DVD and digital and stuff like that. And it's just one of those fun, I don't understand why some movies like the American Pies of the world or some of these other ones are so successful, and something like this, which is essentially the same thing, just like people like think, oh, it's just this horrible movie. I'm like, It's funny. And I think the cast they assembled here, like you've already gone through it. I mean, honestly, you already covered most of my notes on this movie, but but
Unknowingly.
oh yeah, like everything you talked about, I'm like, oh, he already talked about that, talked about that, talked about that. But like you said, the cast they assembled for this movie is all people who knew their assignments. Jerry O'Connell, basically, kind of, he'd done his '80s thing and then '90s, and then that in this '90s period, late '90s, early 2000s, he did a lot of these kind of things. There's one called Buying the Cow, which I really enjoyed. If Ryan Reynolds shows up in.
If we can remember when it actually came out, we are 100% talking about Buying the Cow.
That one's a ton of fun. He did one. He only has a supporting role in one called Love Stinks, which I actually thought was funny. But he did a lot of these kind of R-rated comedies, and I really enjoyed them. Jamie Presley obviously did a lot of this kind of thing. Jake Busey we already talked about. So it's all people who I'm not going to say they're great thespians, but they know the roles that work for them, and the roles in here worked for every one of those people. So the cast was great from top to bottom. I thought the humor was great. There's a lot of funny scenes. There's one involving a testicle in the hospital. There's the three little words scene.
There's a whole other subplot too, where it's like there's no reason for them to do this. They're just doing it to add another comedic thing to it. But here it works.
And I was laughing my ass off. There's the three little words scene. There's the librarian scenes. There's the sperm bank scenes. There's a whole. It's from top to bottom. I'm just laughing through this whole movie. The only parts I thought that didn't work for me are, I was talking about how this movie, like Tank Girl, is completely dated to the 2000s or to the 90s. This one's completely dated to early 2000s because they shove in these random Mission Impossible spoof scenes with the rock climbing. Mission Impossible 2. Mission Impossible 2 with the rock climbing, and complete with John Woo doves and everything. And then there's a random American Beauty scene shoved in there. And it's like, okay, these kind of things that date it. And I thought, well, these are the kind of things you would see in date movie or those spoof movies, which I thought those are the ones that didn't really work for me, but everything else in here did.
The American Beauty one is him like envisioning while he's trying to jerk off. So that one I'm okay with. But yeah, the Mission Impossible, because you have when he falls off the cliff and you have the doves shooting out. I was like, you're really kind of going after the worst Mission Impossible film here. But
and it also has. I mean, you talked about the animated opening. I miss animated openings like that, with some of those '80s films than with this. The other thing I like about this movie, which you don't see so much anymore, I love the blooper reels over the credits.
Yes, the blooper reels were over the credits were great. That's a niche thing now. If they do that, I'm trying to think of the last comedy that actually did that. Game Night did it, and Game Night was hilarious with their ones. But it's there's a lot of stuff in this that like you mentioned that we enjoyed in the old school movies of the 80s and the 90s that I kind of wish we'd still have. Sometimes some movies will do it because they feel like, oh, we're gonna hook some people, but then they don't work. But Tomcats, it works, and it worked in, like I said, some of the movies that we already mentioned. But like I said, this cast is a fun cast. It's genuine too, like the story. It actually, because you have this like plot, like I said, with Shannon Elizabeth's character and Jerry O'Connell's character, where they're coming together, and you're like, why would Shannon Elizabeth ever agree to this? And then they give essence to her backstory for her to make sense to want to do this. And then you already establish relatively quickly after that she actually has feelings for Jerry O'Connell's character. So then she's doing this to help him out while also maybe trying to establish something with him. So you have all these plots going through the film that make it fluid so much better. And it works, and it's an enjoyable film. And it's, like I said, not offending anybody. Not that you and I are really offended by any of this stuff.
Well, rephrase it. It's definitely an offensive film in terms of being like an R-rated sex comedy. But as far as political correctness, it's not offending anybody.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the only part of this movie that you could probably go, maybe need to change that if you're going to remake it today, is probably that they really doubled down on making fun of the fat girl, like in two separate scenes.
That and a little bit of the one of their group who was a gay guy.
I mean, he literally all just says.
But even then, they didn't.
They embraced
it to be that they didn't really mock him for it.
No, they just like, hey, you're gay, so you don't count. Which I was like, actually, that makes sense because gay marriage wasn't legal then. But then he ends up basically being with he has a husband basically at the end at that point anyway. But yeah, they just say, hey, stop looking at me like that. Hey, below me. that shit happens today. You could have that joke today. That works.
Yeah.
The only part that wasn't working until the very end was like, why does Horatio Sands have a problem with Jimmy Presley trying to hook up with women? That's hot. And then at the very end, it's like, okay, maybe it's because he just doesn't like being cheated on. But then at the very end of the movie, she's like, you want to join? And he's all like, yeah. I'm like,
Suddenly it's okay.
Through the whole movie,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I say, except for like maybe the one unattractive woman in this movie that they doubled down and like hit her again basically later. I mean, that's the only thing you can maybe chalk up. Yeah, do that a little bit differently. But yeah, the whole testicle in the hospital scene was memorable.
Featuring MASH's David Ogden Stiers, which was never thought he'd do a movie like this. But
yeah, it's definitely a memorable scene in a way. Yeah, it's I enjoy Tomcats. I think Tomcats is a fun movie. I think anyone who wants a fun movie like that you're worried that you put it on TV, because like I said, it's a sex comedy, but it's really by 2000 standards, it's a very tame sex comedy. Like I said, there's not a ton of nudity in it. Yes, sex is the main driving plot through most of it, but it's not like there's gratuitous sex scenes or anything like that. Like American Pie did more within this. I mean, hell, Shannon Elizabeth did more in American Pie than she did in this. But I think the only thing that really was wondering is why does American Pie work more than this? Is because American Pie, they were high school kids. And so you have that younger age group where these guys are, at this point, they're adults. And maybe they think that with, adults, they shouldn't still be wanting to do this, which, come on, they totally are. They totally are. But, but I mean, honestly, like the plot here, this is no different than like How I Met Your Mother in a way with Barney, except that, you can show more in this. Than on TV. But yeah, Tomcats was one of those movies that I always got happy when I was flipping through the channels. For people who know that before streaming there was actual cable TV, and you would flip through the channels at night. Whenever I saw Tomcats pop up, I was like, yes, and I'd put it on. And I would just have fun because, like I said, the characters, like I said, they all knew the assignment. They all put on solid performances, and it's a fun film overall. I would love to see more of this crew, which obviously Jerry O'Connell's definitely not the same kind of person as he was back then. Now he's
like the daytime mom's best friend.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, Dad, yay! And it's like, you used to be Jerry O'Connell. Like, what happened to you?
You used to be cool.
What was the last thing Jake Busey was in? I'm trying to think about what's the last thing I saw Jake Busey.
The Predators. Last time I remember seeing him.
He's been on TV stuff, but like Stranger Things. He had 5 episodes.
That's right.
That's the last thing I saw him in. But yeah, he's such a good character actor. He really is. But it's like, yeah, he's one of the guys you see him is like, and then like 5 minutes in, you're like, no, he's
never going to try to play like a serious dramatic role. So
no, because you can't believe him in that kind of a role. But the characters that he plays, you can buy him every fucking time.
Yep.
Anything else you'd like to add for Tomcats?
No.
All right. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Weekly Crusaders. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. Of course, don't follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Out right now, this week's episode of Cinemasochism, where we talk about 2000s Dungeons and Dragons. We apologize. Also, there will be a review out for Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. We both saw that, but the review will just be me because Brian's seen it like 10 days ago. So he probably doesn't want to do a review with me for it. But coming up next week's movies, we've got yours is more of a dark comedy, isn't it? Or is it just a straight up comedy?
It's a crime comedy, I guess.
It's one of those where it's like just like with Tank Girl, it's like I want to say I saw this movie, but I don't remember a single thing about it outside of the lead.
With an awesome ensemble cast, I gotta say.
Yeah, so we got that, and then my movie is a remake. Well, I guess based on the post credits, it's a continuation, but it was supposed to be a remake film of a classic horror film or cult classic horror franchise. It's a requel, basically. Thank you for that. That has another version of it coming out this month. I wonder what it is. Think about that. And to me, outside of not the comedic tones, superior in terms of the horror compared to the originals.
I agree.
Yes. So we got that. We got Cinemasochism coming up this week. We already said what it was, which is 1993. Super Mario Brothers, right before the release of Super Mario Brothers, which we'll have a review for next week, as well as Air. So we got plenty of videos coming up here on the channel, so be on the lookout for that. Also, a little bit of a teaser here. Brian and I are cooking up something potentially really, really cool for Cinemasochism. If it works, it will be something different and fun. If it doesn't work, then we'll just keep doing it the way we're doing it.
You teased it for nothing.
I teased it for nothing, but I don't care. I'm excited about it. We were playing with some stuff the other night. And we're like, this is gonna be really cool if we can pull this off. But anyway, I'm Sean Waskrug. That is Brian Michaels. We are the Movie Crusaders. And until next time, in case we don't see you, go watch the movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.